What's up, everybody? We are live over there on YouTube. I'm going to add in our friends on Facebook and on Twitter, and then we're going to get this thing started. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. Enjoyed the combine. All right, we're live on Twitter. Now we're live on Facebook, and now the podcast is underway. What is up, everybody? My name is Garrett Chapman, and this is the Falcons Podcast with Garrett Chapman. No matter where you're getting your podcast, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, make sure to, just ask a bunch of questions and hang out here with us on the show while we just sort of dig through some Falcons news. We got a lot of stuff that came out today, a little surprising. There's no offseason. What is the offseason? I don't actually think it exists at all. It's a 365-day a year sport, and the news from this week is only served to remind us of that. The NFL Combine has come and gone. We'll react to that here on the show. Plus, Kyler Murray just got released. What does that mean for the Falcons moving forward? I'm going to tell you why he actually can make a ton of sense here in Atlanta. We're going to talk about all of that. Plus, I take your questions, so make sure to drop those into the comments, and we'll get to those as quickly as I can. But if you want to make sure that your question gets answered, make sure to hit it with a super chat that pushes you straight to the front of the line. No questions asked, and I really appreciate you. Best way to support the channel, best way to support me, and I really appreciate all of you. No matter where you're getting your podcasts, make sure that you are subscribed to this one. Give me a follow also, GChapATL on Twitter. We got a lot of news coming out. Free agency kicks off next week, so make sure to dig into that one. I see another PR says happy hour. Garrett, what's up, my man? 6 o'clock. It is happy hour. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, at least Central Time. So it's definitely happy hour out there in Central Time. And look, it's always happy hour. See, Trace Move says Murray on the vet minimum is a win-win, and I agree. Let's start there. Trace Move actually kind of dug us right into it, so might as well. So, of course, the big news of the day is Kyler Murray. He gets released. 7 seasons in Arizona, chock full of some highlight-worthy plays. He ends with just one playoff appearance, and that was a wildcard loss to the Rams back in 2021, which ironically was also, maybe not ironically, maybe not the right word there, but that was also the last time that he had a winning record in the season. And I want to say it was 9-5 or something like that, but he's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He won the Rookie of the Year back in 2019. And the stats were great. He's not very big, and the jokes were never ending just about his size and or lack thereof, I should say. But he's also one of 3 players to throw for more than 20,000 yards and run for more than 3,000 yards. Maybe that's cherry picked, but he joins Josh Allen, Cam Newton as the only quarterbacks to do that. He's thrown for 121 touchdowns. He has 60 interceptions. The 2-to-1 isn't awesome. You'd like to see him throw fewer interceptions, I guess. But he also has the 32 rushing touchdowns that you can add in there. And he finishes his career 38-41 in Arizona. And the last 5 years specifically are the reason he's getting cut. And that's going to be the biggest, I guess you could say, detractor from potentially signing on with a team like the Falcons or any of the other teams that are going to be in the running to sign him. He tore his ACL in 2022. He hasn't exactly been the same guy since. He's played just 3 full seasons in his entire NFL career. The last one came in 2021, which was the last time he had a winning record. But I mean, it's not great, Well, actually, he didn't play the full season. It was only 9-5 in 2021 as a starter. 2024 was the last time he was actually the last time he was a full-time starter. He started every game. But he tore his ACL in 2022. He returns for 8 games in 2023 in the second half of the season. This year had already gone awry for the Cardinals, so it wasn't really like they were doing much. It's more just like, let's get him back into the swing of things and get him back playing football, because that's the best way that you're going to get back into it, is just play the game. Plays every game in 2024. Then he plays just the first 5 games of 2025 last season, and he suffers a foot injury, but it remained to be seen that whether they intentionally shut him down just to, play Jacoby Brissett. It was kind of an unclear thing with that whole situation. It seemed like they were holding him out. Maybe there was, I don't know what the whole thing was. I think it was a little political in terms of his health. But again, I'm not stating that as if I have inside sources telling me that. But he'll finish his career out there as 38-48-1. And it doesn't look great on the surface, but this is also a good reminder of what the Cardinals were without him. 5-25. without Kyler Murray as the starter compared to 38, 48, and 1. There's a reason he signed a $230 million contract in 2022. It's just unfortunate that he tore his ACL later that season. But like Trey Smooth mentioned just a second ago, you can get this guy on the veteran minimum. That's fantastic. It's effectively what Russell Wilson did a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago in Pittsburgh. Sign him in, bring him in for about $1.3 million, see what he can do. And I mean, ultimately, because he's due like 36, 37, something like that $1 million. A lot of that's offsetting. And so that's all he needs to do. He's going to be making his money anyway. So why does he need to go out and sign this big old contract? So all he has to do is he can pick out the team that he wants to go play for. This is best case scenario for him because he's making his money either way. He can save his new team a ton of money and he can showcase his ability. He can tell folks or show folks that he still has it. I mean, this is a former number 1 overall pick. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, and when he is healthy, the dude's a killer. He's a strong player. He's an impact player. Sure, he makes mistakes and everything else, but I think he'd actually fit into this Kevin Stefanski offense pretty effectively. Dan Graziano, Jeremy Fowler, they linked him to the Falcons after the combine. Matthew Berry of NBC, he did the same thing on Monday. So it's not like I'm coming out of left field saying that the Falcons are in the running for it. Shoot, man, I wrote an article about it yesterday. I just repurposed that. You can go check it out at GChapATL. I just put it out on Twitter. Another reason to be following me because I'm putting all this stuff out all the time. And you look at the way that this could work out for the Falcons, $1.3 million is exactly what they need because you have a rookie quarterback. That'd be making less than a rookie or our quarterback on his rookie deal. And Michael Penix, he can compete for this job because we don't know what his exact time frame is going to be. Maybe he's back in August. Maybe they get a chance to compete and see what it looks like in the summertime. Maybe Kyler Murray has to end up playing a couple of games of the regular season. And if he doesn't look good, okay, fine. Go back to Michael Penix. It's $1.3 million. Who cares? If he looks great, awesome. Maybe you just found your new quarterback. As crazy as that might sound, it's the exact same thing that the Indianapolis Colts did last offseason with Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson looked like he was the young hotshot player, was dealing with some injuries. Daniel Jones comes in. The rest is history. He just got hit with a transition tag, even though he tore his Achilles. He was dominant last season for the Colts. We saw him in Berlin or Germany. It was Berlin. And if you can get something kind of like that here in Atlanta, then all of a sudden things can take off. And I think that could be pretty advantageous here for the Falcons. But they're not going to be the only people who are going to be competing for him because $1.3 million for a number 1 overall pick doesn't happen very often. It's just you're in that sort of spot. I think he'd be the favorite to start here in Atlanta. It's him next to Bijan Robinson with Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Kevin Stefanski. I think that's great news for everybody unless you're Michael Penix. That offense could be pretty damn good. And then on that note, you can invest and continue to invest on the defensive side of the ball like I've been clamoring for on this podcast for a very long time. But let's be honest, he's not going to be the only person. This isn't going to be the only franchise that's going to be interested in going and getting Kyler Murray. The Vikings are probably the best landing spot for him, I would say, just because J.J. McCarthy was an absolute disaster. But at the same time, they got Justin Jefferson. They got Jordan Addison. They got TJ Hawkinson. It's going to make life a lot less stressful there for a Kyler Murray. Similar, but to a higher degree than what you have here in Atlanta. Pittsburgh and Miami, those are 2 other spots that could be looking for a quarterback. I think it depends on what Aaron Rodgers does in Pittsburgh. If he decides to retire, then Murray could become one of the top options for Pittsburgh and Mike McCarthy. They have a ton of draft capital and lots of money to spend. So that would give them some potential firepower and a way to say, hey, this is what we can do. And we've already seen Pittsburgh do something like this with Russell Wilson. For the Dolphins, I mean, Tua is going to be released or he's going to be traded. I don't necessarily see him going down to Miami, but you also have some weapons there. You've got Devontae Chan, you have Jalen Waddle. They just released Tyreek Hill, but it's not my favorite spot for him. But at the same time, I think it can make a lot of sense. But the Jets are actually the betting favorite right now. They're the betting favorites. So I would not go to New York. I don't think that there's enough money in the world that you could pay me to go play for the New York Jets. But at the same time, it would be a pretty eye-popping place. Like if he goes there and it works out, then jackpot, because then you talk about saving your image. That's exactly what he could do. But this is what the Falcons have to do. The Falcons have to consider these types of things because that's where they stand. We know that they're going to look to insulate the position. We already know that because Kirk Cousins is going to be on the move. Michael Penix is still coming back from his knee injury, and we don't know when he's actually physically going to be back. It could be July at the very earliest. Could also be September. I mean, we have absolutely no idea. I've seen some reports from Emory Healthcare, like they have their stuff online saying that this is when a player could be back. This is when they might not be back, whatever. It's all speculation because every knee injury is different. Every injury in general is different. But the best case scenario, and I will say this too, for anybody who may not be taking me seriously right now, it's Michael Penix staying healthy for a full 17 games and seeing what you have. But quarterbacks in this day and age, or in any day and age, really, they're not likely to play all 17 games. They're just not going to. And the Falcons have to be prepared for that. So who better to go do that than bringing in somebody like a Kyler Murray and seeing what he can do? I mean, but if it's not him, who's it going to be? Malik Willis is going to be very, very expensive. I know I've said this several times here on this podcast. He is, the more I've been reading about this guy, the more you're going to see a guy trying to be, he's going to ask for $25 to $35 million. And I just need folks to be ready for that. And it's not going to be coming here in Atlanta. I would imagine that the Falcons pick up the phone and call his representation, but promptly put it down and say, let's see what else we can do. So if it's not Kyler Murray, I think you can look down the list of some other options. Tua Tagovailoa from Miami, he could be an option if and when he is cut. I think that's more just it's a guarantee. I mean, he's going to be cut. He's not going to be a Dolphin next year. And that's one that I would not like quite as much necessarily. I think Kyler would be a much better situation for the Falcons, but I mean, Tua, he's another former first-round pick. He's somebody who can come in here and be acquired for, I would assume, the veteran minimum. Joe Flacco is one that I've heard a lot of people throw around, but one that I think could make a lot of sense, assuming he hits the market, is Geno Smith. You're not going to find, and look, again, you're not going to go find a great option. That's just, franchise quarterbacks are not found in free agency. It's just not something that happens. I know, and this is also just the season after we see Sam Darnold go win a Super Bowl with the Seahawks, but that is an outlier. That is the exception to the rule, not the rule itself. So we can't judge the decisions or hope for certain decisions to be made here in Atlanta that would resemble what happened in Seattle, because this is not the Seattle Seahawks, and this is not that was not a standard situation. So you're going to find warts on just about all these guys, whether it's injury history or inconsistency, or maybe they throw a lot of interceptions, or maybe they don't have a big sample size like Malik Willis. You're going to have a lot of issues here, no matter which direction you go at the quarterback position. And I'll say it again. The best case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons is that Michael Penix gets healthy and stays healthy, and you see what he can do. And even if he doesn't play all 17 games, you need to find yourself an answer to the conundrum of who Michael Penix is as an NFL quarterback. Because if he can be the guy, great. That's your guy. Question answered. Let's move on. Let's go get offensive linemen. Let's go get another cornerback. Let's go get whatever. You can move on. But until you get that question answered, it's going to be looming over this franchise. They haven't had a franchise quarterback since 2021. You thought you might have had one with Kirk Cousins, but obviously not. That didn't work out. And one other fact here, the Atlanta Falcons have not had a quarterback battle in summertime since Matt Ryan in 2008. And even then, was it really a quarterback battle in 2008? We might even go back to 2007. That's how crazy it's been. It's been a long, long time. And look, this is also a franchise that hasn't had a quarterback in several years. Hindsight's 2020. Hindsight is absolutely 2020. But one of the biggest mistakes that Raheem Morris made last summer is not opening up a quarterback competition between Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. It was a massive mistake. Remains to be seen what it would have actually changed anything. Would it have changed anything? Maybe. Who knows? But they wanted to go all in on their young guy, and that didn't work out. So again, hindsight's 2020. It's not always fair to look at people in the rearview mirror like that. All right, let's dig into some more comments. If you have any questions, no matter where you're coming in from, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, they all pop up here for me, all the same. So I see Michael Ronquillo hits me with the double hearts here. What up, my friend Michael Ronquillo? Welcome into the program. Craig Air Force on YouTube says, bring my Sooner alum here, 1.3, and Flacco once more. Yeah, Joe Flacco probably will want more. The thing is, I think Joe Flacco is more likely. If I had to make a guess right now, I think Joe Flacco will be the backup quarterback here in Atlanta. I think he's ultimately going to make a lot less noise than any of these other options would. Malik Willis would want to be the starter. Tua is going to want to be the starter. Kyler certainly will want to be the starter. I think Joe is probably at the stage of his career where he's not going to pound the table and make a lot of stink. I think he just wants to come play for Kevin Stefanski and, I don't know, just suit up again. I think that the Falcons probably give him the best chance of doing that. But ultimately, if you can get Kyler Murray, it would make a lot of sense. And I think that could mean good things here for the Falcons and in a hurry. Because if he can come here and stay healthy for a full season, we've seen what he's capable of doing. He's a difference maker. He's a Pro Bowl quarterback. Those guys don't come along very often. Another PR says, I just don't like QBs that can't look over the offensive line. Yeah, he's short. He's tiny. I think, what's his actual physical listed height? He's listed at 5'10". I don't believe him. I don't believe that at all. I don't think he is 5'10". I think that I'm probably taller than Kyler Murray, and I'm like 5'9 3/4. I would imagine that I got him in that department. But yeah, I see what you're saying. He's also somebody who has fantastic athleticism. Now, that's where you got to look at the knee injury and see what kind of impact it actually is going to have on him and what it looks like for him moving forward. Can he get back to what he was pre-knee injury? He had the full season in 2024. That year he comes out, throws for 3,800 yards, and he's still running the ball at a decent clip. But actually, what did he run the ball for? I just pulled up his stats. I want to make sure he was actually running the ball pretty effectively still that season. Yeah, he ran for 572 yards. I mean, you can see that he's got numbers. I mean, he's a 4,000 almost. I think those are air yards. Let's see. Yeah, he's actually never been a 4,000 yard passer. And I'm old enough to remember when Matt Ryan had done it for a dozen years in a row or whatever it was. People were like, yeah, everybody does that. Yeah, it's pretty hard to find a 4,000 yard passer nowadays, isn't it? Now, of course, there's other reasons for that, but ultimately it was still a pretty meaningful stat. And I remember people laughing at me when I said that he was a 4,000 yard passer. It's like, everybody is. No, not anymore. But no, his height is a legitimate concern, but he's still got athletic ability. He's still able to move around, and he expands that pocket in such a way that it's not going to be as big a deal as some people think. It matters, but when you have that elite athleticism, you can at least make up for it a little bit. That's all I'm trying to say. Questioning his work ethic. So another PR says his work ethic is questionable with a little emoji. Yeah, I mean, I remember what was the whole thing that was written into his contract about Call of Duty. Yikes. I remember when that came out back in 2022, he was mad about that. But at the same time, like, you didn't read your own contract before you signed it. He signs it and then retroactively goes back and is all upset that it was in there. And I'm like, it was in there the whole time. Like, you didn't notice that the first time, but maybe it's on his agent. Who knows? But I think that ultimately he's a professional quarterback. He wouldn't have signed a big old contract if he isn't going to work hard. But he's not going to be the first in, last out kind of guy. I think that's been pretty clear. It's one of the detractors, and that's a real thing. The fact somebody on Twitter, they tied his production to when the new Call of Duties would come out, and it was pretty glaring. It was pretty wild, but it's something that he's going to have to address. And I mean, if he can pick his new team, maybe he's got a chip on his shoulder, and that can be a valuable thing. Eric Noah comes back, says, how's it going, Garrett? What's up, my friend? Does this mean that the Falcons are done with Penix Jr.? No, it does not. No. Michael Penix Jr. is still on the roster. He's not going anywhere. I still think, and I'll say this one more time, I think that best case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons is that they figure out what they have in Michael Penix Jr. First off, he has to stay healthy, but you also have to get a guy on the roster who can win you football games. I want to see a competition. I want the best quarterback possible to be on the field for the Falcons. That might be Kyler. It might be Tua. Who knows? And shoot, maybe they do go after Malik Willis and they pay him a big old lump sum of money and see what he can do coming down here. But I do think that Michael Penix is still in the running to be the quarterback. There's a reason that the Falcons haven't fully committed to the guy. They just don't know what he looks like because he's not healthy. And they just want to keep their options open. This is not the same situation that we had with the previous regime where you have Terry Fontenot making claims about Kirk Cousins and then turning around and drafting a quarterback number 8 overall. I think Ian Cunningham and Kevin Stefanski are doing this properly and actually going through and letting the process happen and not trying to jump in front of things like the previous regime may have. But Penix may be the starter. I would actually, if I'm a gambling man, I would gamble and say that Michael Penix is going to be the starter week 1, assuming he's healthy. If he's not healthy, then obviously I'm immune. I'm protected from that. But I think that if he is healthy, he's going to be the starter week 1. Because if I was a betting man, I'm also going to say that Joe Flacco is probably going to be the backup quarterback. He's my prediction, I guess, here, March 3rd, 2026. Joe Flacco is going to be the backup quarterback. That's my expectation. Jay Scoom says Drew Dahlman retiring at 27. If you haven't heard, I did hear. I put out an article about that earlier today. Very surprising. He's a Stanford guy, very smart guy. And for other folks who are familiar with NFL news, Andrew Luck did this a couple of years ago. Andrew Luck also went to Stanford. I don't know if there's any correlation. I doubt there is, but those are pretty intelligent dudes. And it remains to be seen what Drew Dahlman's going to do, but he was only 27. That's the craziest part about it. He signed a 3-year contract worth a lot of money, and it felt very sudden. It's very strange, and I hope ultimately that everything's okay. Remains to be seen. I haven't seen why he's retiring. I don't know if he just is tired of playing football, which, again, he's made a lot of money, maybe not by NFL standards, but by normal human being standards, he's made a good chunk of change by age 27. I'd kill for any amount of that money, at 27, shoot. But it is still surprising because I do think that he had a lot of meat left on that bone, and I think he could have played for several more years. Maybe he just wants to get away from the game. Maybe he's had enough. Could be a lot of reasons. I don't know why, but I do know that he was very good here in Atlanta. He started something like 78 games here. And he was, unironically, he was one of the best value selections that Terry Fontenot made here in Atlanta. And now I think that Kyle Pitts is the only remaining player from the 2021 draft class that is still in the NFL. Somebody fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure he is. That 2021 class is just proven to be worse and worse and worse. Let me make sure about that. Someone fact check me on that. And drop it in the comments. Let's see. KRP says, I think it would be great for Michael Penix Jr. to battle starting with Kyler Tua. That's only like 1.5 mil. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. I want to see a quarterback competition. I do. It's a new era. It's a new regime. What does that look like? Earn it. Go earn the damn position. I know not all coaches like a quarterback battle, but I do. I want to see it happen. And may the better man win. And then if it doesn't translate to the field, I'm trying to instill some competition on my team. And the Falcons, not Falcons, but just NFL teams in general, practices are not what they used to be. They don't exactly suit up and go hard at all. So it's hard to know until you're actually in the games, and they're mostly just trying to preserve themselves for the games. But then on top of that, hopefully we actually see some guys play some preseason action. I was pounding the table all last offseason about how it's kind of overrated, but football is the best way to play football. You only get better playing the game by playing it. It's the way it goes. Maybe we see that this summer with the new regime. Kiara comes back and says, G-Man, do you do mock drafts? I do. I actually do. And look, go give me a follow at GChapHCL for anybody who's new here. I just put out a brand new mock draft, a post-NFL Combine mock draft that actually just debuted yesterday. You can also Google it. Just type in a post-Combine mock draft Falcons, and then you should see the Falcons on SI, and click on that, and then you'll see my new mock draft. I think most people will be pretty happy with where I go in this one, but I also have one that is sitting on Jake Slaughter, which, I mean, I got him with the second pick, I believe, I think it was the second pick. Maybe not the most popular decision, I guess, for most people, but I do think that ultimately he could be a really good option for the Falcons. And actually, I pulled it up right here. And Kiara, you know what? We can talk about it real quick. Let me load it in here. Bam. Boom. Kiara, there it is. Look at me. Scott's going to be mad. I'm pulling away clicks from Falcons on SI. So that's what I need all of you guys. Once we're done with the podcast, head over to the website and click on this so Scott doesn't kick my butt for showing everybody what the actual draft looks like. But at number 48, we've got Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. He actually made some comments about Michael Penix during the draft, saying he was the best quarterback he's ever played with. That includes Ty Simpson, the guy who we played with here most recently in 2025. They had a pretty good season together. Jeremy Bernard turned into the number one receiver. It was supposed to be Ryan Williams, but Bernard took over that position. I think he'll be on the board at number 48. Had a pretty good combine. I'd say a lot of wide receivers had a good combine. We'll talk about some of those takeaways coming up here in just a little bit. But Jake Slaughter was my second pick. Center out of Florida. He's an all SEC center. He's got good size for the position. He's a two-time team captain, outstanding player. I think it's assuming that you move on from Ryan Newsel, which I don't know if they are or not. Then I think Jake Slaughter could be an outstanding upgrade at the position, and you would save some money in the process. Fourth round, Sam Roush. I think he probably had one of the best combines of anybody in the tight end room, or really the tight end room had an outstanding weekend. But Sam, I think, could potentially be a tremendous option for the Falcons. He would be a 1-for-1 replacement for Charlie Warner, just a blocking tight end with a little bit more upside. So I think that he could make a ton of sense there if he drops to them in the fourth round. Xavier Harris, I've got him in the sixth round. It's a little later than I really wanted to go for a defensive lineman, but the value for the three guys in front of him, I just couldn't pass up. And I liked Harris's combine. He's got good size. He'll be a guy who can kind of develop into somebody who can be a pretty good option there in the interior. And he can continue to develop some pass rushing moves. And I think getting him in there with Nate Ollie into a rotation could do him well. And I think he could actually be an impact player here over the next couple of years. But then in round 7, a guy who I don't think is probably going to be there anymore after an outstanding combine is Taylon Green. His physical traits are out of this world good, just absolutely outstanding. And I understand there's more to the position than just running a 40 time or doing what your vertical or stuff like that. But you can find a position for a guy like Taylon Green. And if it's not Taylon Green, maybe you go get Haynes King. I know I covered the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets for 24/7 Sports. I know the guy pretty well. I've sat in on probably 100 of his press conferences. I've talked to him privately, and he's just he's a great dude. He also plays some pretty damn good quarterback over there at Georgia Tech. So if he is on the board in the 7th round and Taylon Green is not, I think Haynes King could potentially be an outstanding option there for the Falcons. And look, they threw my grades up there. C+ for Jake Slaughter is I bet it would change if Ryan Newsel ends up not being a Falcon. That would probably push up to the high B's or something like that. And again, I don't really care about their grades. The grade that they throw onto there doesn't really matter to me all that much. But yeah, to answer your question, Kira, that is my mock draft. If anybody has any comments about it, let me know if you have any questions. Dalton Rogers says, Rams saying they wouldn't mind trading their first rounder for a, quote, proven player in the secondary. Give him Bates. Get him back on the first round. Try to swindle another day 3 pick from them. Maybe. I mean, if you can get a first round pick for Jesse Bates, I think that could be great. I don't know why everybody's so eager to trade Jesse Bates, though. I don't know and I also don't know this report respectfully, Dalton, I trust you. I believe you, but I didn't see this. And defensive, a member of the secondary could mean a lot of things. That could mean a cornerback. It could mean a safety. It could mean a bunch of different stuff. You may also want a guy who's not in his early 30s or something like that. He's still an all-pro type player, a good player. But at the same time, maybe that not worth the first round pick. I don't know. I put more value into the picks, especially a first round pick. First round picks are very, very valuable in the NFL. I don't think that you're going to get a first round pick and something else for Jesse Bates. Just depends. But maybe. And look, Falcons need picks. Falcons need a lot of picks. So we'll see. John Harrell says, good afternoon, Garrett Chapman. Good afternoon, my friend. More of a good evening, but I guess some people are out there in Denver. Some people are tuning in from out west. So good afternoon to you in that case. One time for the fans says, hey, Garrett, quick questions. How many teams would be interested in Flacco? It seems like fans are saying Flacco could end up here. I'd say most teams who needed backup could be interested in Flacco. I mean, he's bounced around a good bit. So he's just a high-end backup quarterback. I mean, think about what Matt Schaub was for the Falcons for a long time, near the end of his career, just to put it in perspective for a Falcons fan. I mean, it's impossible to know. I mean, shoot, I don't know the backup quarterback situation in a lot of places, but say the Falcons trade for a Bajan or whatever his name is from Chicago, that could open up a job in Chicago for him. I mean, who knows? So he's just a high-floor backup quarterback who's going to provide a lot of veteran insulation into a quarterback room, and anywhere with a young quarterback could be interested in that. I think that Atlanta could provide him a good opportunity to start games. You could also look at Miami. They could be interested in him. The Jets could be interested in him. He's already been in New York at one point, but he could go back there. The Titans could be a place he goes. I mean, assuming what they do with Will Levis. So the options are endless for Joe Flacco. It's just, he's got his pick. It's just what he wants, which again, that's only going to come down to what he wants. Let me power 2, says Panther. I don't know who you're referring to, but okay. I believe you. Nick Overman says, nah, everyone is too obsessed with QBs winning the formula. The winning formula has never been pay a quarterback a bunch of money. Never is a lot, but I'd say that recently, the last couple of years, you've seen some lower paid quarterbacks go make an impact. Let's go back through some of these quarterbacks that have made a Super Bowl. I mean, Sam Darnold obviously just won it. Drake May was on his rookie deal. You look at Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's kind of an outlier, right? I mean, he's a guy who made a ton of money. He's one of the highest paid players in the NFL. How many Super Bowls did he make in a row? So again, formulas don't exist in the NFL. You have an idea. People have been trying to capture this winning formula for forever. Just get a really good quarterback, give him some good players, and fill out a great defensive line. That's your formula. I mean, there are a lot of great quarterbacks, lots and lots of great quarterbacks. And I don't think that just because you're paying a quarterback good money doesn't mean that you can't win. If it's that simple, then the quarterbacks would just take less money. But it's not. Because most of those teams are still competing and going deep into the playoffs every single year. It's just the margins are so flippin' tiny in the NFL that the bounce of a football can be the difference. But there are a lot of reasons for why teams win and lose. Quarterback and having a good one is ultimately going to be the most important one. You can go. I'm trying to think of some of these other quarterbacks who make a lot of money. I don't think Joe Burrow had signed his contract extension at the time. You can see that's a good example of one to Nick Overman's point here. I mean, that's a team who they've invested heavily into 2 wide receivers, into an edge rusher who's not going to be there next year now, and a quarterback who's making $50 million. So you have $100 million plus tied up into 3 players right now. That's tough. That's really tough to fill out an entire roster, but people have been trying to capture a winning formula for the last 60 years, as long as the Super Bowl's been around. And there is no winning formula. You have an idea, but it starts with just having really good players and keeping them on your team. Nick Overman says Brady was never a top paid quarterback. He took cuts to make the team better. Brady did do it. I mean, Brady did a lot of that kind of stuff. And the Patriots were able to go pay a bunch of different people. But at the same time, he also was married to a multi-billionaire or whatever, right? So a lot of these guys, I mean, I'm never going to tell somebody to take less money. Go take your money, go make your money, because for these guys, they have about a 10-year span, some of them 3 or 4 year span of going and maximizing their revenues and earning potential. That's their time. That's their only opportunity. So why should they take a 10, 15, $20 million pay cut for something that's not even close to guaranteed? There's no way that anybody would know that. So Brady is always the example people pull to. I would challenge anybody to look at anybody else who's taken major pay cuts and let's see what the results are. I mean, because you never know. I mean, you could have injuries and everything else, but Tom Brady was also a highly marketable player. He still made a ton of money, and his wife was worth now ex-wife was worth billions, right? So it's always a bit of an unfair comparison to make, but the one that no one ever ceases to do. Trenton says, "Hey, G Money, yes, Kyler makes sense, just like Flacco too, etc. We need another quarterback in that room. Period. Yes, no, they absolutely need some added bodies. I think the term I've been using tonight is insulation. That's what they absolutely need." Another PR says, "Wasn't Willis drafted after Ritter?" Maybe. I thought he was a second round No, maybe he was a fourth round quarterback. Let's see. I think you're right. He was a third round pick. Or maybe they were both third round picks. Some people had said that he could push into the first round. I remember that. Let's see. I'm getting the spinny wheel here, so sorry. Yeah, he was the 22nd pick in the third round. Let's see where Desmond Ritter was. Yeah, so he was a little bit after Desmond Ritter because Desmond Ritter was sitting at 74. Third round quarterbacks generally don't turn out to do a lot of big things. Like, again, people talked about this when they were trying to explain Desmond Ritter. Ritter was a guy who people are like, oh yeah, he can come in, he can be Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was the exception to the rule, not the rule itself. That's what people have to understand. There are exceptions to rules, but there's a reason that quarterbacks generally aren't drafted in the third round and turn into franchise quarterbacks. Generally, no. And even then, we see that Russell Wilson had an expiration date. It just happens in the NFL. It's just, there's a reason certain things have happened for a long time. That the Falcons convinced themselves that Desmond Ritter could be that guy. And maybe we're seeing this with Malik Willis part 2. It's why I don't think that it makes a ton of sense to go pay a guy like that $30 million. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it because it doesn't make sense. He could end up being a solid quarterback. Some people thought he could have been a first-round quarterback, but he drops all the way to the third round. It remains to be seen why. He got his opportunity in Tennessee. It was bad. And then he lands in Green Bay with a really good offensive coordinator, or play caller, I should say, in LaFleur, and lots of weapons out there because they have a lot of B-level wide receivers who are just everywhere in Green Bay. But I just don't see paying him $30-ish million. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. John Harrell says the mistake was drafting Michael Penix Jr., an injury-prone quarterback. Well, those were mistakes of the last regime. We'll see. We shall see. But in fairness, his last season-ending injury had come 4 years or so before that, So it was like 2020 was the last time I think that he had a knee injury. But he dealt with other injuries. It's just kind of how he is, and that was like the I guess the knock on him. But we'll see. We'll see what he actually ends up being next year. Hopefully, he just can stay healthy. But if he can't, then you have your answer. Let's see. Lance Render says, I'm surprised at the negative reaction from a lot of the fan base at all. Potential quarterback options when Penix isn't healthy. None are perfect, but arguably Murray, Tua, and even Geno, if cut, are upgrades. Potentially, yes. I mean, I'd say that all three would be upgrades. I think all three should be put into a quarterback battle with Michael Penix and see who best man wins. And hopefully it ends up being Michael Penix and we can see what he actually looks like. But if you bring in a Kyler Murray, you bring in a Tua Tagovailoa, you bring in a Geno Smith if he's cut, and they win, so be it. They can be your quarterback. It's just like to your point, Lance, you're not going to find a quarterback without his warts. Not on the free agency market. Those guys generally aren't there. Like even the great ones. I mean, the great free agent quarterbacks. You can talk about Peyton Manning. He was just coming off of a neck surgery, right? Tom Brady had been coming off of I think it was his worst season in New England since God knows how long, 25 years before that. A lot of people were speculating that the best years were behind him and he was done. And then he hits free agency and he goes down to Tampa and they go win a Super Bowl, right? So sometimes it works. Sometimes it does. And other times it really doesn't, because great quarterbacks are not found in free agency generally. There are exceptions, but it's not a rule. See, Trenton says, I've got a question. Is 3 years, $22 million a high number for an RB1? What are we looking to pay an RB2? Yeah, 3 years, $22 million. That's pretty good money, but that's what Tyler Algier is asking for. He wants 3 years. He wants $22 million. It's just not what you're going to pay an RB2. You're not paying a second running back who's going to take 150 carries, 175 carries. You're not going to pay him $7 million a year. It just doesn't make any fiscal sense for your roster. But B is going to make a ton of money. Bijan Robinson is going to make somewhere in the range of $20 million, and he's going to be expensive. But with that, you need to insulate him as well. That's a position that you need to go find somebody who can come in and be a second running back who can take some carries away from him. Nate Carter is on the roster right now. He's the third running back for this team right now. And I don't necessarily, he fell out of favor with the last regime specifically because he was fumbling the ball. He dropped the ball a couple of times and then you didn't see him again. But you're just not going to see that kind of money paid for that kind of position. That's it. But Bijan Robinson is going to make a ton of money. B is going to make probably a 50, 60, $70 million contract, $100 million contract. I mean, he's going to reset the market for running backs. Halsey says, Flacco, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions with Cleveland. Yeah, because the team was terrible. Flacco may also be over the hill. You know, when he was with Cincinnati, he was not great either. He was fine, but he provided a bit of a spark for them in Cincinnati. He showed that he's certainly more competent than what he was when he was in Cleveland. I'm not big on the stats from everything that we saw from Cleveland because that team was dreadful. Like the team was truly, absolutely terrible. They didn't have any. I think Harold Fannin was probably their best wide receiver. Yikes! And played tight end, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, to your point, he started 6 games in Cincinnati. He throws 13 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. You know, so I can throw that right back at you once he has some good pass catchers and so a little bit of talent around him. It's much better. It's much, much better. Cleveland was a dumpster fire, and it reflected that. You look at the other 2 guys. What did they do? And technically, he was a Pro Bowl quarterback anyway, so who knows? Shows where that's gone, the Pro Bowl. John Harrell says, maybe 5'10" with a helmet on and cleats. Joe Andrews on Facebook, he says, I don't know how he says, I don't know why we're going to rely on Penix. He can't stay healthy. We need to bring someone in that can potentially take over long term. Yeah, fine. But you're not going to find that guy in free agency probably. That's just not where those guys are. Unless you go get Malik Willis. But I've already stated my piece on Malik Willis. Kyler could potentially be a guy, could be a long-term option. He's still in his 20s. I think he's 27, 28 years old. He could still play for another couple of years, but that's also not a guy that I want to have past his realm of athletic ability. Once that starts to regress, he's going to regress even worse. We'll see. Excuse me. Trenton says, I love how the fans have given up on Tua, Geno, Kyler, Jimmy, and crew. All these guys could easily go anywhere and win. I don't know. I don't know about that easily go somewhere and win. I can't go that far. I think they can go somewhere and start. I'm assuming Jimmy Garoppolo is who you're referring to there. No, I mean, I think Jimmy Garoppolo could be an option to come in here as a backup quarterback, but I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily your best shot there. But he could be affordable, which is nice for the Falcons. John Harrell says, bring in Kyler, Tua, and Wilson. I don't think you're going to get all three. You're not going to get all three of them, but you might be able to get Zach Wilson and Kyler. I don't know. Depends. Terry Clark says good backup options for this year would be Jacoby Brissett. He's under contract. Geno Smith is under contract. And Jameis Winston, I think he's also under contract. Good veterans would help Mike with their experience and could fill in if needed for the season. Yeah, all three of those guys are under contract right now. So you're not going to go trade for somebody. That's my opinion. Mac Jones is another one that you could throw into this sort of category. He's out there with San Francisco. But again, he's under contract. The Falcons don't have assets to trade. They don't. And you have 5 draft picks. You're not going to trade one of your 5 draft picks to go get a backup quarterback. I just don't see that necessarily being the case, especially for a guy who's only going to be here for a year. Unless you really think that they could turn into a viable starting quarterback for you, then I don't think that that's going to be the case. My opinion. Trenton says, for the record, wasn't Penix on a stretch of like 10 touchdowns and 3 interceptions before he got hurt? Sounds like a guy starting to figure it out, and he was starting to move a lot more. Yeah, the game that he got hurt is unironically the best football game that I think I remember him playing. He looked pretty darn good in that first half. He'd been playing a good brand of football, and then he got hurt in the second half. And it sucked because he had been dealing with the knee bruise that he suffered against the 49ers. He missed the game against the Dolphins as a result, and then he came back and looked like he was starting to figure things out just a little bit, and then he got hurt, tore his ACL. And that part sucks, but at the end of the day, the best ability is availability. If you can't be available, then you can't be a starting quarterback. So that's going to be the biggest thing for him this season. Derek Hart says if Ty Simpson is available at 48, he's not going to be available at 48. I'm just going to I'll stop you right there. He's not going to be available at 48. That's not happening. To answer your question, yes, obviously. I mean, if Ty Simpson's there, sure, but he's not. It's a 0% chance. It's not happening. He's not going to be there at 48. I can say that pretty definitively, especially after recent weeks where you can start to see the Ty Simpson stock starting to go up a little bit. He's a quarterback. He's at a premier position. There ain't a lot of other options there for many people. It's just he's not going to be there. Penix isn't staying healthy. Hello. Okay. Trenton says, I would cry if Atlanta ended up with German and Jake. That draft is fire. I hope so. I think that'd be a great draft. Jake Slaughter is one that I'm really high on. I see I've made it to where we got into Falcons draft reactions. That's why I'm a little behind on comments. So, I mean, again, if you have comments, I'm probably not going to get through all of these as it stands. So if you have something that you want to get to the front, just holla. Hit me with a super chat. Trenton says, but yeah, if they ended with Jeremy and Jake, that draft is fire. I hope so. I think it would make a lot of sense. I think that would make a lot of sense. Brissett and Geno were under contract. They are. It is what it is. I don't see the Cardinals moving on from Jacoby Brissett. They're not going to have a ton of money to spend. And I mean, he's the perfect bridge quarterback for next year. So he can come in, he can be the bridge, and they can draft somebody and see what they can do. They could make a lot of sense for a Ty Simpson if he drops. Just keep an eye on that one. Russ Irving says, I'm down with the Slaughter pick. Newsel is okay, but I'd prefer to have a more commanding presence at center, both in the physical and leadership sense. And I think that Slaughter is that. He's a team captain. He's somebody who's an all-SEC performer and played some of his best games in the big moments. It's just that Florida team was bad. Wasn't his fault. Another PR says, oh, come on. How about a Haynes King? Go Tech. Yeah, there you go. So, there it is. Halsey says, Brissett is solid, not liquid or gas. That's a good one. I like that, Halsey. I like that. Terry Clark says, think Geno gets bought out or cut outright. I think he does too. I do think he does. It's just it hasn't happened yet, so I can't really factor him into that. I haven't heard the smoke from it too much, but we'll see. Halsey says, Haynes King ruled the underwear Olympics. He was great. Ran the 6th fastest 40 time ever for a quarterback at the combine. Sucks that Taylor Green stole a lot of stole a lot of the limelight, I guess you could say. But no, Haynes King was fantastic. Looked great in the Olympics, or the underwear Olympics, as you say. And I think he played himself into a draft pick. I think he'll still be a day 3 guy, but I don't know, man. If you can get him in the 6th round, maybe the 7th round or something like that, if he drops to the 7th, I think you'd be kind of silly not to take him because I've heard some of the Taysom Hill comparisons, and I think that makes a lot of sense. He's a great athlete, and he can also throw the ball pretty damn well too. Just maybe not as a franchise. He's not. I don't see him as a franchise quarterback though. Yeah, GATX boy _ speaks says, you don't think the Raiders keep Geno as a backup? No. He just signed a big old contract, and I'm assuming that they're going to want to get out of that as best they can, kind of make up some of that, but just kill some of the dead money. Raiders are going to be terrible next year. They're just not going to be a good football team. But no, I don't think so. I think that that's going to be a position where you draft Fernando Mendoza and then you move on. And that's your guy. That's just what you're going to do. And I was just pounding the table for quarterback battles. I think you could potentially keep him in that sense, but it's also the first overall pick. And I think when it's the first overall pick, things are a little bit different and people weight that a little bit differently. But no, I'd say that if you want to go get your guy some weapons, Geno's, you're not going to just have that kind of money invested into a backup quarterback unless you're the Atlanta Falcons, in which case then you love spending $27 million on a backup quarterback. But oh well. Trenton says, taking Jeremy would say who our quarterback is, would love to see this regime to get behind publicly for the first time, but I get it. We're talking about behind number 9. I think if they go get Bernard, I don't know if that necessarily is emblematic of that, but I think he'd be a high upside type of player who could turn into a really, really good second wide receiver alongside Drake London. That's what this team needs. They need more wide receivers, right? So that's why I think Jeremy would make a bunch of sense for them. Michael says Garrett Chapman, Drew Lock was drafted by the Broncos in 2019 when Kyler Murray was the number 1 pick in the 2019 draft. Thank you. I know that Drew Lock ended up bouncing around a little bit, was part of that trade to go get Russell Wilson. I know we've talked a little bit about Russell Wilson already, but he was included in that trade alongside Evan Ingram, I think, was in that one too, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was Evan Ingram. I don't remember, but that was a big trade. I remember that. Terry Clark says they could GTX boy. Am I saying that right? I hope I'm saying that right. But $66 million is a lot to have behind your brand new starting rookie quarterback. Yeah, there you go. It's a lot of money. Trey Smooth says, I'm going to be pretty upset as a fan if we get 40-year-old Flacco over the other options. Definitely the best backup, but I will not be pleased from an aesthetic perspective. I know how you mean this. I don't care about aesthetics. I care about figuring out what you have with Michael Penix. And ultimately, if Michael Penix is not your guy, I'd rather the Falcons not win a lot of games next year. Get yourself some pretty good draft capital for what we expect to be a jam-packed 2027 draft class at the quarterback position. That would be my rationale, I guess, for that. I've also just the cupboard's not bare in Atlanta. This is not a position where the Falcons are going to be in a tear down mode necessarily, but you have a lot of questions. And if you can answer all the other questions, specifically quarterback, then you can gear up and really go for it in 2027. I think that's sort of the timeline that makes sense now. You identify your weak spots and continue to reinforce the ones that you know you have. So wide receiver, defensive line, those are two that you have to invest in this cycle. And then next year, maybe that's another reason to go get a Jake Slaughter. Then you solidify your offensive line for 2027. Jake Matthews, Caleb McGarry, they're your bookend tackles for next year. And maybe you can find some developmental tackles over the next class or two and see what you can find there. But you're set at guard. Matthew Bergeron needs an extension, but you'd have Jake Slaughter in the middle. And then B's going to get a contract extension next year. It's going to be his 5th-year option for next year. And then you extend him after that. Or maybe before that, who knows? But then you have year 2 of that wide receiver room with Drake London and whomever they pick in this draft class. And maybe you add somebody in free agency as well. And then you go find a quarterback. That can make a lot of sense. And whoever that quarterback ends up being in that 2027 draft class, you're taking one of the best ones if it really doesn't work out next year. So that's the way I'm kind of rationalizing that. Obviously that's not best case scenario because I've already said best case scenario is that Michael Penix works out and Michael Penix is your guy. TBD. Halsey says lowest paid quarterback equals guaranteed winning. No, it doesn't. I know what you're trying to say, but no, it doesn't. That's just not lowest paid quarterback is not how it works. But I mean, maximizing a quarterback on a rookie deal. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's what they did in Los Angeles with Jared Goff. They did that with who else? I mean, CJ Stroud, with Joe Burrow, with Drake May most recently. You can see people, people where you can flesh out and add talent all over the roster. I see what you're saying. It's just, it is what it is. Micro and Kilo says Daniel Jones was drafted number 6 in the first round of the 2019 NFL draft. I think Michael has given us a lot of facts here. Terry Clark says if the Cardinals land Willis instead of the Jets, thank you, Brissett. I think you see Brissett is released after that. Probably. I mean, if you see Malik Willis go to the Cardinals, then I think that would make a ton of sense. Just because you don't want to pay both of those guys, if that makes any sense. But I actually see the Cardinals probably leaning into Jacoby Brissett and then drafting a quarterback next year. I think that's what more makes sense. Halsey says, yes, Ritter was second quarterback taken after Kenny Pickett. Yeah, there you go. Says he agrees. Terry Clark says, would pass on Tua. Last thing you need with a bum knee. Penix is Tua one headache away from retirement next season. Yeah, he's had a lot of concussion issues. I mean, I thought that Tua's career was over. I really did. I don't think it's going to continue much longer. He's not my favorite. I don't think he would make a lot of sense here, personally. Halsey says teams often need multiple quarterbacks. They do. Falcons could do worse than finding a 2+ year backup. Yeah, I think so. They need a backup quarterback. They'll need two quarterbacks be signed at least. You need 3 quarterbacks on your roster. I think you could bring back Easton Stick and sign Joe Flacco. That's your quarterback room. I think that actually would make a ton of sense. GATX Boy says, convince Kyler to sign a 2-year deal first. Year minimum, second year team option. No, he's not going to do that. It's not going to happen. He's going to sign a 1-year deal somewhere, and then he's going to go. He's going to do his prove it deal, and then he's going to move on. All right. I got to roll, guys. My computer is about to die, and I want to beat that. So I'll take a couple more questions. Terry Clark says, if Micah Morris is available in the 4th, we would be lucky. Need line depth desperately. I don't think offensive line depth is not the desperate need. I'd say the desperate need is on the defensive line and at wide receiver. Offensive line is definitely a need. I think that you could find some. I'd like to see them get some additions there at the tackle position specifically. It depends on what you want to do with Matthew Bergeron next year. He's been a good player for the Falcons over the last several years, but say you want to stay cheap at that position because your offensive line is looking like it's going to be pretty damn expensive. So you want to make sure that doesn't become the case where it's overpaid. I don't think they're at that stage yet, but they're making a lot of money on just a handful of positions. Trenton says, G-Money, in your opinion, is it going to be difficult paying Bijan, Drake, Kyle, and a quarterback? Yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. It's going to be a very expensive roster. Bijan Robinson's going to be $20 million. Drake is going to be $30 million. Kyle Pitts, I think, is going to be gone after next season. I think that would make a lot of that could happen. And if you have a quarterback, too, that you have to pay, it's going to be a really expensive roster. And yikes. Depends. I mean, if Kyle has an outstanding season and it's starting to look like he's going to play on that franchise tag, according to a report from Albert Breer earlier today, it seems like Kyle Pitts is going to play on that franchise tag. And assuming he does and has a great season, he's going to command $19.5 million. I don't know if I want to pay a tight end, a wide receiver, and a running back combined. What is that? $75 million. I'm not in the I don't know about that. Because then you still have to fill up, every other position on your field. So it's going to be a chess match. It's going to be a bit of a puzzle there for Ian Cunningham because the best years of those players, those cheap years, I guess we've been talking about a good bit here on the show, kind of got wasted. Not kind of, they got wasted. But it is what it is. All right. Didn't get into my combine reactions. Maybe we can do that on Thursday. We can do that. Plus, the Falcons are going to Madrid. How cool is that? Anyone want to go get some Sky Miles and head on out there to Madrid, and maybe you can go watch some Falcons football. But either way, we'll do a little bit of a free agency primer coming up on Thursday as well. So we'll react a bit to the NFL Combine, and I'll give you some people to keep an eye on as we get into this free agency window. But again, as always, I really appreciate all you guys. Lots of great questions, lots of great content here coming from y'all. And I just react to what you guys are doing, and you guys make it possible. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, because we do this every single Tuesday and Thursday starting at 6 o'clock. So make sure to jump in. Make sure to join us next time. And until next time, my name is Garrett Chapman. This has been the Falcons Podcast.